Coming to you from the mountains and the plain, the only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another episode of the Conservative Daily Podcast. Happy Friday, Joe.
Happy Friday, Max.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even know it was Friday. I thought yesterday was Friday originally. I thought Tuesday was Wednesday. It's been a mess. All the days tend to be melding together. But apparently it's Friday for the rest of the people who still go on the Monday to Friday schedule. So I guess happy Friday.
Yeah, and there's something to be happy about because people in the United States, they are waking up.
They are, and I mean, we see it in North Carolina. We see it in Michigan. I know you're going to talk in a little bit about what's going on in Colorado with a big protest being planned. People are getting fed up. People are being tired of being told that they have to go and stay in their homes. I mean, Joe, the ridiculous part of it, I was on OAN last night, and I brought this up during the interview. The ridiculous thing is that the police are now setting the prisoners free, right? They're setting the prisoners free out of the jails and the prisons because they say it's too dangerous to house them in these facilities because they could contract COVID-19. But then the minute a law-abiding citizen protests about these unconstitutional orders being directed not to go shopping, not to leave their home, they ended up being thrown into the same jails that are apparently too dangerous for the inmate population, but fine to throw law-abiding citizens in. We saw that happen in North Carolina where someone was arrested for protesting, demanding that the shelter-in-place order be lifted. And as a result, she was arrested, thrown in the back of a cop car. They claim it's too dangerous for the inmate populations, but they're more than happy to throw all of us into those same dangerous circumstances the minute that we question their authority.
Right. I mean, I don't even know how to argue with you. It's absurd.
It's a fact.
Well, we're starting to see protests happening all over the country. So there's a protest that is happening right now in Minnesota. There's a protest that's happening right now in Texas, in Dallas. There's a protest that is now happening, or they're organizing. The militia in Virginia are organizing to march on the Capitol in Virginia. There's one of the biggest, I think, that is actually very surprising is in California, there's a group that has almost 400,000 people that said that they are going to march on the Capitol, right? So the capital of their city. What was it? San Diego or San Francisco? Anyway, it's like 400,000. It's a big number. And what they're saying is that we've had enough. You have a right to choose. You have a right to stay at home and be quarantined. You have that right.
Yes.
You have the right. People at the office don't have to come to the office. You can choose. I tell people all the time, you can choose. You can decide to stay home. I'm not going to hold it against you. I accept you where you are, not where I want you to be. Part of being an American and being and accepting people that are gripped in fear is letting them feel safe. The rest of us, we want to choose a different path. We want to have the opportunity to open up our economies. We want to make sure that we can protect our families. The investment that we put into the businesses that we have. We want to get our employees back to work. We want to restart our economy. We don't want our society to drift off into nothing. And then all of a sudden this leftist dream of becoming a socialist society happens. And you'd say, oh, it's not a government takeover.
Yeah.
It might not be, but the output variable of shutting down the economy is we are going to have a supply and demand breakdown. It is going to happen if we do not reopen our economy. And they told us, what did they say? They said, let's just recap the media really quick. So the media came out and people in government came out and said, and politicians, they came out and said a couple of really simple things. One of the things they said was, we're going to have a Pearl Harbor moment, right? That was 8 days ago.
Yeah.
The next week is going to be very difficult.
It's going to be like Pearl Harbor. Yeah.
Right. Never happened. They said 2 million people would die. Never happened. 200,000 people would die. Never happened. Oh, we're down to 60,000. That's not going to happen. And now we're finding out that they're taking people that are untested.
Yeah.
And they're saying, you are now a part of the COVID-19 death tally.
And that's where it becomes really, really messy because, okay, if someone is suspected to have COVID-19 and they're 80 years old and they die of a heart attack, does that mean that the heart attack killed them or did COVID-19 kill them? I mean, every day around this country under normal circumstances, people die and they have the common cold. They die from other things, being hit by a car, being struck by lightning, like all different potential causes of death. And they also happen to have the common cold at the same time. Now, we don't classify all of those deaths as common cold caused, right? We don't do that because it's silly. If someone drops dead from liver disease or a heart attack on the street, and they happen to have the common cold in their system at that time, we don't classify that as a common cold death. And yet we're seeing that in New York. They're padding the numbers. They're adding more deaths to the total because these people were never tested positive for COVID-19, but they suspect that they were killed by COVID-19. I mean, you said it in the past, Joe, in other episodes, that they're acting like the flu took a holiday. Like there's no one dying from the flu right now. It's the first time in American history that they're claiming that no one has died from the flu during these months, which we know that that's false. And we see that in Michigan too. Michigan, I think they just added a few dozen fatalities. And the result is, I mean, it'd be one thing if they went back and said, okay, these people died on this day. So we're going to add that death to those totals for those on the day they died. But no, they're inserting the deaths on the day that they're on today, right? When they added the deaths yesterday, those were reported as fatalities that occurred yesterday. So you see in these states, you see the huge spike, right? You see a huge spike. It happened in Colorado, Joe, where they had a backlog of tests and they finally were able to run the tests. They confirmed that people had COVID-19, they passed away. Instead of trying to assign those deaths to the proper dates and changing their graph, they just ran them through the system as all dying on the same day. And President Trump actually brought it up during one of his press conferences, saying, I have no idea what's going on in Colorado, but it looks like there's a surge in cases. We're going to have to bring more relief money there, which is false. There wasn't a surge in cases in Colorado. They just ran old tests and put them through as all dying on the same day, which, I mean, that's the conspiracy theorist in me saying, well, there's a reason that New York tested as many people as they did. And yes, they wanted to keep the people safe, but they also wanted to make sure that the government knew, the federal government knew, New York was a big epicenter and New York needed the bulk of the aid funding, right? There is a benefit to inflating numbers. There's a benefit for these people, for the medical professionals, for the statists. There's a benefit for them reporting as many deaths as possible. Now, I don't believe, I'm not so cynical to believe that everyone in positions of power are doing this, but there is a benefit to them reporting more than less, right? It's better for them to err on the side of caution, they would say, and report more deaths than they actually occurred. And I'm just sitting here saying, well, wait, no, there are still people dying from heart attacks. There are still people dying from liver failure and from kidney failure, right? People in this country die every day from that. Just because they contracted a respiratory virus doesn't necessarily mean that the respiratory virus killed them. And as morbid as it sounds, if someone is 80, 85, 90 years old and they contract a virus and they succumb to that virus, there's a significant argument to be made that they died from old age. Am I wrong? I mean,
no, you're not wrong.
It's heartbreaking. I call my grandparents every day. And I'm telling them, stay inside, don't go out shopping. I mean, they're stupid. They're still going shopping to get their essentials. They don't understand how delivery food services work. I'm calling them. It's heartbreaking for the people who've lost loved ones, who have lost grandparents, great-grandparents. But we see this. Listen, there are plenty of grandparents every year, elderly people every year who die from the flu. And it isn't classified as that because they get pneumonia, they get bronchitis, they get these other conditions. And we don't classify that as a flu-related death. At the end of the year, they estimate it. But to see everything today being classified as a COVID-related death, it really awakens the conspiracy theorist inside of me. And we all want real numbers. We all want to make sure that the data is there, that the policymakers, the health professionals, they have access to the most accurate data available. But that's not this, right? Saying someone died of a car crash. I mean, someone gets into a car crash because they sneeze. Did COVID-19 kill them? No.
How about the kid that got hit by a truck? Yeah.
But that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. Someone sneezed, they close their eyes, get in a car crash, they bring in the body, it tests positive for COVID-19. They say, oh, well, they died from COVID-19. No, they died because they got in a car crash. I mean, you're going to see, when this is all said and done, you're going to see that there's going to be a lot of funny business in these numbers. There
already is. There already is a bunch of funny business. I mean, and I think that's what everyone's saying is that, first of all, you have Facebook and other guys that are fact checking and saying, oh, this is partially false. And then you go and you actually read what they're saying is partially false. Yeah. And it's because they just don't agree. They don't agree with it.
It's not. They don't think
it has nothing to do with fact. They don't back it up with anything, or they refer back to a. We just saw this where they referred back to a Business Insider post, and it was written by someone who's not a doctor who said, hey, this is, and then there was no footnotes that said that any of the information they put in the article was true. They just said that this is true. Absolutely. Yeah. So they referred back to something that was written on businessinsider.com, not a journal, not CDC, not anything else. And it's supposed to be fact, and they're fact checking things based upon their own opinion. Yeah. It's not fact. We're not using truth anymore, because if truth were truth, then why are they taking down posts? Why is Facebook removing posts? Why is Instagram removing posts that they they deem as inflammatory? Not untrue, just inflammatory.
Yeah.
They don't want you to have this post up there. They don't want to talk about the 3,700 people in New York City that were reclassified as COVID-19 victims, right? Even though they're untested, and maybe some of them did die of that, right? But here's the thing we need to understand. In the CDC, if we look at the CDC, this is going to be like watching paint dry. For just give me 60 seconds.
Joe, we're hemorrhaging viewers.
I don't care. Joe, we're going to talk about this.
I gotta let you know this because yesterday Joe Biden had a fundraiser and 55 people were in attendance for his virtual fundraiser. We just hit half of that. We actually have more viewers now today for this podcast than him. I don't want to lose that. I'm
going to do it anyway. So on the CDC website, they go through mortality rate, the mortality rate of pneumonia and influenza, right? Those two things. And typically pneumonia follows influenza. So you get the flu and then you get
there's other ways to get pneumonia, but it's it tends
very
to
common,
be linked,
right? Matter of fact, the CDC actually ties those things together. Now, on the CDC site, it talks about the mortality rate of hospitalizations from influenza and or combined with pneumonia. And do you know what the mortality rate is for that?
I imagine
it's 10%.
Of people who are admitted into a hospital.
That are admitted to the hospital that have the flu.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that makes sense because to get to a hospital, to get to that level, you'd have to have really, really bad symptoms. I don't know anyone.
Max, that's what we're talking about now. Yeah. The people who are getting to the hospital have these bad symptoms, right? So do you know what the epidemic rate is? What the threshold is to consider something an epidemic? You know what the CDC? It's 7.1% is the death rate.
Well, now the technical definition for an epidemic is when a virus or disease goes across countries' borders. That's like the actual definition. The CDC might treat something as an epidemic or a pandemic based on their numbers.
Listen, you're missing my point. It has nothing to do with the fact that we're saying it is an epidemic. There's an epidemic threshold. So there's a threshold. There's a percentage of people that are hospitalized to mortality that die, right? That's at 7.1%. Anything above that is considered epidemic.
Yeah, epidemic is considered epidemic levels. Yeah.
Right. So the influenza is at 10%. 10%. Okay. In 2019, it was at 10%.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about, do you know what the mortality rate is for COVID-19?
I know that of the people that require a ventilator, only 20% of those very severe cases end up surviving, somewhere around 20%. I know that when you take in people who are hospitalized but don't get put on an invasive ventilator, which is not just a mask, it's not just oxygen to help you breathe. Invasive ventilators is when they put you into a coma and they shove a tube down your throat and they manually breathe for you. I know that of those patients, it's 20%, but obviously that's not all patients. It gets
so let's
lower
do
when
all
you include
patients that
other
are
people.
hospitalized. Okay, let me just tell you what that rate is. You ready?
Sure.
It's 8.3%. It's 1.7% lower than that of the influenza. And people are surviving at a higher rate that are hospitalized with COVID-19 than they are of influenza. Now, this isn't me. This is actually on the CDC site. So
and it gets dirtier because we saw this in the press conference yesterday, which we live streamed on our Facebook page. We're going to live stream today's press conference too. You got to love the federal government. The federal government isn't allowed to copyright streams, so we're able to live stream that, so you don't have to go through the mainstream media outlets and deal with CNN or MSNBC or any of those hacks. But yesterday during the press conference, they brought up a slideshow, and the slideshow shows that they've been tracking this, and I kid you not, using a term called an ILI. Joe, ILI stands for influenza-like illnesses. So the way they track this coming into the country is they didn't have the testing set up. That came later. But what they did is they told hospitals to report influenza-like illnesses, and they're presuming that the spikes are from COVID-19. But on the graph, she had to explain that, oh no, this spike was the influenza B virus or whatever she called it. So
influenza A would be probably the most severe.
I think she actually said that there was a B spike. But anyway, with this, they're treating it as their form of data. They're using all influenza-like illnesses to track the virus's movement around the country. So we see it with them reporting the death statistics. We see them with it reporting the hospitalizations through these ILIs. They're trying to make us think that no one is dying from influenza, that no one is getting pneumonia from any other cause. We're suggesting that no one has a respiratory illness unless it's COVID-19. We know that's not the fact, right? Obviously, COVID-19 is dangerous for a small subset of the population, especially dangerous for the elderly and people with comorbidities. That's people who are extremely obese, people who have heart disease, other pulmonary problems, diabetes, all that you can find on the CDC. But again, when you talk about it, when you look at the mortality rate of people hospitalized, it is at or below influenza numbers, which is when you see that in 2017, we lost 80,000 Americans to the seasonal flu, and you see what's happening here, it's understandable that people get pissed off. It's understandable we have people protesting in Michigan, protesting in North Carolina. Joe, I know you're helping to organize the protest in Colorado. People are angry. People are angry because this was never supposed to be you're locked in place indefinitely until the virus goes away. It was only to make sure, and we talked about this yesterday, the shelter in place order was only to help make sure there was enough resources to go around. If the spike in cases all happened at the same time, hospitals would be overrun. We know that never happened, right? We know that hospitals were never overrun. It's not fake news to say that hospitals were empty during all of this. They were. There were empty beds around the country in hospitals. So by their definition, this worked because, I mean, that's what they'll claim. There's no reason to have it now, right? The whole goal of shelter in place is to prolong the outbreak, is to spread it out over a long time to make sure we have enough resources to take care of people.
But people aren't talking about that, Max. They're not talking. They think that if we shelter in place, that it's going to go away. It's not going away.
I mean, I'm seeing New York saying that they might not get back to normal until July, August. New Jersey is saying June, July. California, their lockdown is indefinite. They don't have an ending date for their shelter in place order. It's maddening. I know that Ohio is planning to start reopening on May 1st. Now, Ohio was one of the states that was blowing the whistle the earliest. They were the ones who were locking down everything with one confirmed fatality.
Right.
That is a fact. They had one confirmed fatality when they started locking everything down. And now they said that they were going to have hundreds of thousands of cases just in their state alone. That's what their model predicted. Now they're one of the first states to say they're going to reopen. I mean, there's no use. We've talked about this before.
There's two things, Max.
The cure cannot be worse than the disease.
And it's not even a cure, right? The solution, even a solution, there is no cure. You're not going to get a cure to a virus. A virus is going to mutate. That's why you get a flu shot every year, is because there's constant mutations that happen. You're going to constantly have to deal with this. It's not going to just go away. And Polis gets up there and he says, in Colorado, and he says, listen, we can never go back to where we were before.
That's not true. We have to.
But the point is that who is he to tell us? Who is he to tell us you can't go back? That's like telling you the Constitution, by the way, forever is altered by this event.
Yeah.
And that we don't deserve as people to live our lives, to have an economy, to be able to protect our families, to work hard, take care of the people around us, to want something bigger than what we have today. What are we teaching the generations coming up? What are we teaching them? I know what we're teaching them. We're teaching them that we can create hyperbole, this Chicken Little mentality, run around and just create facts that aren't facts, and everyone believe it because the government, for the first time in their life, is out to protect you.
Yeah.
Just how absurd is that? What I just said. How absurd is that?
Yeah, no. The CDC reports that in 2018, influenza and pneumonia, they combined it, killed an estimated 59,000 Americans. Lower respiratory diseases, chronic lower respiratory diseases, they estimate that killed 159,000 Americans. Cancer killed almost 600,000 people. Heart disease killed over 655,000 people. I mean, you look at any of these diseases, any of these deaths, whether they're contagious or not, and you look at that, and I can make a leftist argument for why every single one of these causes of death should justify closing everything down. I mean, we saw this. We're seeing this from the left now. The left is saying that March was the first month since 2002 where there wasn't a school shooting. So we're seeing from gun control advocates, they're advocating for us to keep the country locked down longer because they say that'll prevent school shootings. It's crazy. I mean, people are losing their businesses. People are losing their livelihoods. We've talked about this on the past on the show. Suicide rates are increasing in this country. People are killing themselves because of the despair, because of economic collapse, because they can't stand the idea of being cooped up in their house. So we've said it, the solution cannot be worse than the disease. But what we're seeing around the country is that people are fed up. We're seeing people are fed up of this. They're going out there protesting. I mean, in Michigan, that was egregious. The governor actually threatened to extend the lockdown because people protested.
Right.
She actually said, wow, you're out protesting. You're violating. I might need to make this even longer. That's a threat. She is threatening the people. So talk a little bit, Joe.
It's not threatening the people, Max. It's threatening the people's ability to live and survive.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. It's not and by the way, just so we're clear, the Democrats right now are literally saying we want to give $250 billion to the state and local governments.
Local governments, yeah.
Right? That's right now more important than refunding the PPP. Yeah. We should have a single item, very clean, fund the PPP and another $250 billion, but they don't want to do that because they want their pet projects.
Yeah.
If a politician says that they care about you, your house is on fire, right? Let's just say you're looking out the door, your house is on fire, and they say, I have the bucket of water that'll literally put the fire out on your house. I have it. But in order for you to take this bucket of water, I need you to drink this glass of milk. Like if you don't drink this glass of milk, I'm not giving you the water to put the fire out. That is the equivalent of what is happening right now.
Well, what they're doing is this is a form of terrorism. This is holding the country hostage. Democrats are right now engaging in terrorism. They are threatening people's lives, their livelihoods for a political goal because they want the Green New Deal. They want funding for illegal aliens. They want a bailout for Planned Parenthood. They want more funding, unrestricted funds to go to LA and New York so they can do whatever they want, including using that money to defend themselves against lawsuits because of their unconstitutional orders. I mean, that's how crazy it's getting. I want to play this clip before we go to a break in a little bit. This is a cut of Nancy Pelosi a week ago congratulating Democrats for blocking this funding. Let's go to cut 1.
So last week when they came they asked for $250 billion in 48 hours. I said, well, I don't think so. Let's see how we can open this up to many more people. So Chuck Schumer and I, and this all happened on the Senate side, and I congratulate the Senate Democrats. They went to the floor when Mitch McConnell went in for his 250, and they said they objected.
So that's Nancy Pelosi not only bragging about blocking the stimulus funding for small businesses, but she's actually congratulating the Democrats for doing it because she wants to spread the money to more people, which, as you said, it's just them trying to pick winners and losers and make sure that their winners get a piece. People like the Kennedy Center, which got $25 million, and then immediately after receiving the money, furloughed all of their musicians and said they can't pay them. We just received $25 million and, oh, you're all laid off. Congratulations. I mean, that's what we see from the Democrats. Let me go to this clip because we hinted at this on the show yesterday. This is a clip of Nancy Pelosi on a late show, and she's bragging about what's in her 25,000 dual refrigerator. She's bragging about her designer brand ice cream, which I didn't even know existed. Let's go to this cut.
Speaker Pelosi, what have you found? What are you going to share with us from your home?
Chocolate.
Really?
Chocolate candy.
Oh, wow.
And
It's unbelievable.
this is
unbelievable.
something you can get through the mail.
Okay.
You never run out. Can I show
Show
you?
me. Yeah, absolutely. This is the episode of Cribs I never knew I needed. Oh, my. Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Other people in our family
She
go
just
for
slid
some other
out
flavors, but
the
chocolate, and then we have some other chocolate here.
See, I've always felt a connection with you, and now I understand why.
Mm-hmm.
So that Nancy Pelosi's eating ice cream, showing off her mail order ice cream, chocolate flavors. That noise you sounded was her pulling out the drawer of her refrigerator. She has 2 refrigerators in her house. Each refrigerator before tax costs over 10 grand. So when you add tax, you add delivery fees, you consider the fact that there's 2 of them. We're looking at the Speaker of the House showing off her $25,000 refrigerator set after all is said and done with taxes and delivery and whatnot. And she has people living on the streets in her district. They have homeless people sleeping in parking lots with lines drawn between them 6 feet so they don't infect each other. And she's on this late show bragging about how much ice cream she has. And this isn't even just like your average Breyers ice cream or your store brand ice cream. It's not even Ben and Jerry's. This was some serious designer ice cream that she orders in the mail and it gets delivered to her house. I mean, the disconnect is remarkable. And we learned yesterday that 20,000 American businesses who had applied for the PPP, they got notices from their banks saying that even though they applied when there still was funding, the funding ran out before it could be dispersed to them. So sorry, 20,000 businesses, you're not going to get any funding. And that's because of Nancy Pelosi, and it's because of people like Chuck Schumer. And that's part of the reason why Americans are so furious right now.
All right. Well, let me ask you this question, and we're having some technical difficulties on the getting people online. I'm ready to yell at Josh. We have people that are calling in that want to talk, so I want to apologize to those people. Just kind of bear with us. We're trying to fix it right now to get the caller in. Josh is going to call Mike, who's kind of heads this stuff up, and see if he can get him to fix it. But if this was as bad as they said it is, right? Mm-hmm. If what we were talking about is something that is 10 times worse than the flu, and that if this was true, then can you tell me why the homeless population, which crowds together, is not practicing social distancing? There's tens of thousands of people on the street. Can you tell me why those people aren't dying disproportionately? I mean, they have health issues. They're not. They're going to the hospital, but they're living. They're surviving. And not only are they surviving, but the people on the street, they're thriving. Yeah. These are people that are not. They're not in great health.
In areas like, I know that they're doing this in Las Vegas. I know that they're doing this in Los Angeles. They are trying to get homeless people to distance themselves, which is, I mean, how do you do that? As I mentioned, they're having them sleep and live in parking lots, and they're basically saying each person has to keep one parking space between them. That's their idea of helping the homeless community. But it just, again, it just shows how out of touch these people are. Nancy Pelosi is congratulating Democrats for blocking small business funding. She's in there showing up, instead of talking about what she's doing to help the American people, she's going on late night and showing off her $25,000 refrigerator set and mail order ice cream collection.
Yeah.
And going,
because that's what the American people want right now.
Yeah.
That's what the American people want. The American people want to see you stuffing your face with chocolate and showing them your opulent home. That's what they want.
And just to be clear, everyone watching this, you paid for her ice cream. Your tax dollars, among other things, paid her salary, which has helped her buy those refrigerators. I mean, the average American has to work for half a year to buy those refrigerators. If they work for half a year and bought nothing but these refrigerators, it would take them 6 months to save up enough money to put those 2 sub-zero fridges and freezers in their house. I mean, and then they have no money for the ice cream left over.
But again, I don't care about that. I don't care.
I do.
You know, I applaud.
I don't. I so care about
I actually don't. I don't care about our refrigerator. I care about the fact that that's important. I care about the fact that it's that she's pandering to, and that the news station is pandering to those people that are not affected. Because the only people that actually watch CNN, you know who they are? They're government workers.
There's no one now because there's no one now because the airports are closed.
but I mean, let's just look at it. They're government workers, and by the way, those TVs are still on, right?
So, you think they're still on?
I know they're still on. Absolutely. I was just at the airport literally 4 days ago. Those are still on, and they're still piping out CNN.
Well,
nobody's watching them.
Nielsen does average out based on flight numbers, so it'll be interesting to see if Nielsen actually takes that into account, because the airports are empty for all intents and purposes.
Okay. So we sorry, I just got an email and somebody asking a question about the protest, specifically in Colorado.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, hopefully we have the call-in line fixed, and we'll be able to take some calls. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Ronald Reagan famously said that our freedoms are never more than a generation away from extinction. Conservative Daily exists to make sure that never happens. With our community of 700,000 members, we fight every day to hold Congress's feet to the fire and stop them from surrendering our rights and freedoms. The fight to take this country back is not over. Please join our movement right now by going to conservative-daily.com and clicking the subscribe button to sign up for our free call to action newsletters. We have a chance to save this country, but only if we all work together. Again, this is conservative-daily.com, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button at the top.
And we're back from that break. We are talking about how politicians are going on vacation. They're showing off their Sub-Zero dual fridges and their ice cream collections, and they can't find the time to help refill the coffers of the Payment Protection Program to save American jobs, save American businesses. But they have plenty of time to show off their ice cream collections, apparently, in the case of Nancy Pelosi. Joe, I want to give you this chance to talk about the upcoming protest in Colorado, because I know that the people organizing want to make this one bigger than Michigan, bigger than North Carolina, because Colorado's crackdown has been particularly draconian. We've talked about this on other episodes. A father was arrested for, I guess detained because he wasn't actually booked, but he was put in handcuffs, thrown in a police car for having the audacity to play t-ball with his daughter at an empty park. So we've seen some really crazy stuff come out of Colorado. Talk a little bit about the upcoming protest.
So there's several protests that are planned here in Colorado, and you have some libertarian movements that have one protest. You have a group of business owners that have one that is being organized, and then you have, we have a bunch of groups that are coming together right now, and they're trying to basically make sure that we're well planned. The hope is that we'll exceed 150,000 people that will actually show up, and you can see the government trying to kind of shift our ability to have freedom to do these things, right? So they're saying that they, may shut down I-25 and stop people from getting to the city, which creates a whole lot of problems, because how are you actually going to do that when 150,000 people are converging? They said they're going to shut down private or public transportation. They're literally doing things to violate the Constitution, and they're using it again as a justification for taking away your rights. So there is no, the government. I talk about this a lot, right? I talk about the fact that we've taken the what should be and we're turning it upside down, and now the elite is the government and the politicians. And that 1%, the Jeff Bezos of the world, the Bill Gates of the world, they know what's best for us, right?
Yeah.
So we are not electing somebody to represent us. We're electing someone to rule over us. We are the slave sharecroppers. They are the plantation owners. They get to tell us what to do. And they at any point can act with impunity because they have immunity. And I keep saying that they act with impunity because they have immunity. It's a real thing, right? If they can shut down the highways and justify breaking the law, how do you hold them accountable? How do you hold anyone accountable if the system is stacked against the American people? You now don't have a voice. What they're saying is we're going to treat you the same way that we treat people in China. We're the same way that the communist country of China, the one that we criticize so much for not having rights, not having freedoms, squishing protests. What are they doing right here in the United States? They're doing the same thing, and we're allowing it. And then you have people out there that are parroting this stuff of, we need to keep them in their house. We're going to be just like New York, and it's going to be like Pearl Harbor. And the reality of it is none of that's happening. It's not happening. Nothing that they've said to us has come true. Nothing. But we conveniently forget about the fact that they're lying to us.
Well, I mean,
by the way, they're stuffing their fat faces with chocolate
ice cream. I'm interested when you say that that the governor of Colorado is talking about closing roads, closing streets, shutting down public transportation, not only to prevent your right to freely assemble, to petition the government for redress of grievances, which is your First Amendment right. That is your First Amendment right. You also have freedom of movement. The Supreme Court has found in multiple cases that Americans have the right to freely move between states and around their own state. Obviously, there are exceptions to that, ways that state and local governments can restrict that. Like, it's not a violation of your rights to close a street for repairs, right? But to say that they're going to shut down an interstate, a federal interstate, to prevent people from reaching downtown, reaching the Capitol building, that is a clear violation of your right to freedom of movement, which is protected by the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. Specifically because, Joe, that is an interstate. That is an interstate highway. So by doing that, you are preventing people from freely traveling through the state, and you are therefore violating the 14th Amendment. But they don't care. These people don't care.
No, but they don't care. And what are the consequences? We have to talk about what the consequences are, right? I mean, what are the consequences for people in government? What are the consequences for a police officer that passed out behind the wheel of a car that was drunk during work hours?
Yeah.
And the car was running and he was in it. And he was completely passed out. What do you think the consequences were for that? I'm going to tell you what they
were. You told me about this a couple of days ago.
Nothing. And frankly, all I know is that do as I say, not as I do.
Well,
what are the consequences for?
Here's the other question, Joe. FBI analyst was fired for possessing child porn after a watchdog investigation. What do you think is happening to that FBI analyst? The FBI just announced that and FBI and DOJ just announced they will not be prosecuting the man who was fired and arrested for possession of child pornography. Right? We've seen this across the board with the FBI protecting their own. They are now circling the wagons to protect a pedophile and someone who had child porn on his government computer. He's not going to be prosecuted. That just came out this week. Now, we see it across the board. And that's why I brought up the idea that they're emptying the prisons to protect the convicts, but they're throwing Americans in those same jails for daring to push back at this.
Because we don't have rights. It's an illusion of freedom, right? And we've let it happen because we've elected weak leadership. and weak leadership can be controlled by other weak leadership. And then you have certain people that can move around and can maneuver things and then use the system against the American people.
Yeah.
Right? They can use it. I mean, the law books at the local level, the state level, and the federal level are so complex. They can do and say whatever they want, whenever they want, and they can decide whether or not they charge you with something. They get to decide. They get to rule us as people. How free do you feel right now? That's what I want to ask the people that are listening. How free do you feel?
Yeah.
Let me talk about freedom. Well, I'm safe, but I'm safe. You're safe. Just so you know, that's an illusion too. You're safe until you're not safe.
Yeah, you're safe. You're safe until the police officers. I mean, that was a big case in Colorado too. It was Gonzales v. Douglas County, Gonzales v. Castle Rock. That was a really, really interesting case.
Got all the way to the Supreme Court.
Got all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Brief history of it. A woman was going to the police department and calling them, asking them to help track down her. I think he was separated at the time, might have been divorced. Her ex, her children's father. Her children had disappeared with him, and she was calling police over and over again, asking them to help her. And the police did nothing. They did nothing. She went to the police department, said, "Please, I need your help. He's abducted my children." They did nothing. Long story short,
they didn't even file any sort of Amber Alert. Nothing. They did nothing.
Yeah. Long story short, it ends with the father of the children showing up at the police station and getting into a shootout with officers. He is shot dead. And when police officers look in the trunk of his car, they find the bodies of the children that she had reported missing. So this
but by the way, that died a couple hours before.
Yeah. So this whole case was challenged, saying the case was this woman came for your help. They pleaded for your help. You had the resources, you had the manpower, and you did nothing to protect them. What the Supreme Court found was that police officers have no obligation to protect individual citizens. Their duty is to society as a whole. And at times, that might require them to neglect individuals to protect society as a whole. It was a BS argument because they had the manpower, they had the resources. This is Castle Rock, Colorado, which anyone who's never been there, it's not exactly the crime capital of the world, right? They have plenty of resources to devote to this kind of thing. So that ruling determined that police officers have no obligation to protect you. They do not have to protect you. They have to protect society as a whole. And if leaving you out to dry, in their opinion, protect society as a whole, they'll do that, which is why every American has the obligation to protect themselves. So we see during this, the same thing goes for lockdown. They're not trying to protect you. They're not saying go into your house to protect yourself. They're doing it to try and, they say, to protect society as a whole. When we talked about that Carter judge in California, Marshall, who did that ruling that said cities and counties can suspend the Second Amendment, close gun stores in the name of public health. They're not doing that to protect you. They claim they're doing that to protect society as a whole. No, we are the arbiters of our defense. It is our job to protect ourselves. It is our job to go out and earn a living, not to wait for the check to come in from the government. And right now, we're seeing the anger around this country because people are starting to realize that the claim that this is all for your protection was bogus from the start. It was bogus from the start.
Actually, I'm almost trying to figure out if it's because Congress has the average age is like 72 years old or 73 years old, that they're more concerned about their own skin, right? Like I don't want to catch this. I want to remain in power and be feeding my family and my face.
I have another 20 years of using these double Sub-Zero fridges. I can't go now.
So I think we have to have the conversation about the reality that we're facing today, and how there are two sides, right? So there are two sides. You have one side that says I need to remain safe, which, by the way, I've never seen anyone yesterday say I don't trust the media, I don't trust the government. But on Friday of the week before last, or 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, whatever it was, now I've decided that they actually have my best interest in mind.
No one
and
actually
all of a sudden, they grew a conscience. They stopped being sociopaths. They stopped being selfish and self-centered and greedy and taking more from us than and making it more difficult, where we have to work more hours in order to create a way for our families.
Yeah.
But they woke up and they said to themselves, "Can I please protect you? I want to protect you. I want to protect our society." Right. And by the way, the leader of that whole thing, that regime, Bill Gates came out and said that the world is too populated. We have too many people on the planet. And now he's the carrier of this thing saying, he's carrying the torch saying we need a vaccine and we need to protect life. The guy just said that more people need to die.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's Malthus. I don't know if anyone's ever read Malthus. He's a philosopher who believed that we have too many people and eventually people are going to need to die to ensure that there's enough resources to go around for everyone else. I mean, that's straight out of that. It's I appreciate what Bill Gates does with his philanthropy, with helping the world, helping people in need, but simply producing the Windows operating system does not make him an expert in viruses or vaccines or whatnot. Way too much. There's been way too much deference given to him. I want to real quick mention, Joe, as we said at the beginning, Joe Biden had a fundraiser, a virtual fundraiser yesterday. The campaign bragged that 55 people were there watching. And as of right now, we now have had 9 times as many people watching this as he had at his fundraiser. So I find that fun. But it just goes to show, I mean, the fact that the Biden campaign presented that as like some kind of like good job. We had 55 people show up to our live stream. I don't know.
Nobody. I think that I think people are just at the point where they're just disgusted, right? And you have people that literally want to be Chicken Little. You have people that want to. They grasp drama. They love drama.
Yeah.
And if they can grasp onto this drama of I need to keep everyone safe, I need to be, then that's their plight. That's the thing that they can do is they can get out there and give people advice and tell them that, hey, you need to just be strong, right? And a lot of these people are government workers. They're married to politicians, right? They're getting paid anyway, right? They go into and it's the optics. It's the optics of what they can see. The stories of the person that barely survived or the person that died of COVID-19. But if we did this same thing over the last 3 months, over people that died from the flu, can you imagine what would happen? Can you imagine what stage we're actually setting by not having courage today?
Yeah.
You know what's going to happen come September and August? We're going to be having another conversation about how we can shut down our economy. We're having another conversation about how it's going to get to the point where the right people are going to use this as a tool to get their agendas over the finish line.
They're already trying. And which is why it's so egregious to see what Pelosi and Schumer did with blocking this funding for small businesses. It's not debatable. 20,000 businesses applied, thought they were going to get the money, and now are not going to get a loan because the program ran out of funding. Those 20,000 businesses, unless they have another way to get a loan, are going to go out of business. Depending on how big they are, we're talking probably over 100,000 easily, 100,000 employees who will now lose their jobs, be added to the unemployment rolls. Not to mention all the other businesses have been trying to get these loans. And for what? For no reason, right? There was no reason for this whatsoever. This was Democrats just trying to get what they want. And apparently saving the economy isn't what they want. And part of me, again, this is my conspiracy theory hat. Part of me believes that they want the economy to be tanked because they believe that that's the best way to defeat Donald Trump. So if you're a Democrat operative and you have two choices, help save American businesses or don't save American small businesses, and you want to win the next election, again, it is in their interest politically to keep this as bad as possible. So, I mean, even if the economy were to reopen on May 1st, because of what Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer did, there's still going to be companies that never recover. Yeah. Right. Once you're out of money, you're done.
We got the system fixed, so we have a caller. So we're going to put the caller on. Oh, he hasn't called back. Okay, well, he can call back because now the system is fixed.
Feel free to call back, 888-441-1121, or anyone else listening if you want to take a call.
We had a lot of people calling in. Josh is over here fielding the call. All right, the system's down. It's not a conspiracy. We just got a new board in the podcast room. So it was COVID-19. Made the board sick.
We're going to say that was a COVID-related failure.
So we're actually going to have to buy a new board now. I don't mean to make light of the disease. I don't think anybody does. I think everyone feels the same way. COVID-19 is real. Like the virus is real. It's not like we're dealing with a hoax. This isn't, hey, they just made this up out of thin air.
And now we know, Joe, now we know that actually a high degree of confidence from the federal government, from the intelligence agencies, that this came from a Chinese lab that was experimenting on this. And Joe, the reason they were experimenting on it was to prove to the world that they're better at working with dangerous viruses than the United States. Think about that.
All right, so then
that's where Kung Flu came from.
But if that's true, we owe right now a little over $15 trillion to China. Right?
Yeah.
That's the total amount. It's about 64% of our total debt is owed to China. So here's the thing. Our economy, we lost $2 trillion on this deal. The pain and suffering of the people, and I'm trying to make this, I'm making an argument now. So this is like me becoming Judge Joe.
If you're a lawyer, you take all of the people who have died, who have suffered, the pain, the suffering, the anguish, the financial restitution required is in the trillions and trillions of dollars. Far more than the stimulus, probably far more than there is money on earth to pay it. So yeah, China should pay for this. Frankly, I think we should firebomb the hell out of that lab. Give them 30 minutes notice. Get your people out of that lab. We have specialized rockets and bombs that are designed to incinerate everything so that nothing survives. Firebomb that lab and tell them that the next time you build one of these death traps, we're going to bomb it again.
Yeah. Well, I think that what I was trying to get to here is that we should cancel the $15 trillion in debt.
That becomes difficult because there is a constitutional amendment. It's in the Constitution that the United States debt shall not be questioned. Some people even interpret that as to mean that politicians and government officials violate the Constitution simply by bringing up this topic. It would be tough, but we could do it if we banded together with other countries.
Right. And by the way, this is something that the American people would band around as well. Like the American people would rally around the idea that we are telling China that your government, state-sponsored, caused this. We are going to, in return, cancel the $15 trillion in debt.
Mm-hmm.
I think we then now I'm actually, back in the Bible they used to talk about debt holidays, right? So every 7 years they would basically forgive debt. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And so I'm not suggesting that we get to the point where we forgive debt across the board, but there has to be a way that we can actually move things upstream that allow for us to recover from this, that allow us to protect our society.
Well, the way we probably do it is someone would sue China. It would be a class action lawsuit. It'd be decided that China owes this much money, and then it would be up to the government to say, you owe the United States of America X amount of dollars. We owe you money, so in lieu of payment, we are absolving our debt to you. You're not getting paid. You either give us the money or we're just not going to pay you. We'll take it out of that. I mean, that's what it probably will look like. Some weird international lien almost.
Yeah. So, but there's a way to actually get it done. And I think that if you can get the talking heads out of the way, get all the self-interested parties who, bow down to communist nations and decide that, in the United States, we need to act the same way because it empowers them. I think if we got them out of the way and we started writing down this $15 trillion in debt, there's a high probability that it could reset some of the things that we're doing as a country as well. Right. So, it's a slippery slope as far as what's happening. I don't want to say it's China's fault or not China's fault, because just like, you have conspiracies that float around about what's true and not true. I don't want to perpetuate something that I don't know is true.
Yeah.
Right. So they're saying it might be true. They're also saying that the Illuminati is real.
Well, even if that isn't true, the evidence is undeniable that even if it was organically,
that it came from them. Sure.
Even if it didn't come from them, that China took actions that deliberately impacted all of us. Right? They lied about it. They said that it was not transmissible person to person when they knew it was. The World Health Organization took that, and as a result, many countries did not treat it as seriously as they would have if they had known person-to-person transmission is possible. Producer Josh, do you have that cut from yesterday that you bleeped out?
Yeah, about 30 seconds.
Okay.
He said. So I want to get to a solution. Let's talk about what the solution is. And you were talking about the protests in Colorado and how we were, we're we're predicting that this protest that we collectively, and I don't want to say me, but there's probably 75, 80 different leaders of different organizations that are coming together. It's actually pretty inspiring because you have people from different types of organizations, both on the left and on the right, that are coming together saying, look, let's set aside any differences we have, social issues, so on and so forth. Let's set aside any differences we have, and let's just concentrate on what's best for the people. And we're not saying that we want to take away the right of anyone else to protest, or not to protest, but to stay at home. We want to give people options. We want to make them feel like the Constitution is real. And by doing that, we want to give them the right to go back to work, to open the economy, to open up their stores. And by the way, if nobody comes to your store, then they've made that choice that they're not going to, that reopening the economy was a bad idea. Now, here's what happens is that in a free society, if you open up your economy and people start flooding through your doors and they want to do business with you and they want to open up the economy and everyone opens up their doors, then the people have spoken. And if, by the way, the people are the power that makes the country go round and we are truly in control, then it should not scare the politicians and the government workers. But I think what scares them the most is that we are going to declare, in Colorado, we are going to declare our Independence Day. That is going to happen. We are actually calling it an Independence Day, a day that correlates with the independence that we took from the mothership in the UK, England. And it's our independence. As business owners, as citizens of Colorado, we're declaring our independence. We're declaring our ability to choose, right? And so, we predict that somewhere between 100 and 150,000 people are going to show up for this event, right? And we're planning for it. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So we're going ahead and saying, all right, so what are the contingencies that we need to have to make sure that we keep ourselves safe? We keep the police officers there safe, that we set rules to the game. We disconnect from people that would create any sort of non-peaceful environment. Like, we want to be peaceful as people. We want to show them that we're in control, that we are the power that let them sit in that throne that they are trying to act like they sit in. And so I'm predicting that this wave that's happening across the nation is going to override our politicians, and it's going to create a brand new way for us to create results. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Out of the ashes will come something great. First of all, the American people are ridiculously resilient. Number two, we are going to find a way to hold the government accountable. We're going to start implementing rules that tell you that you have term limits. You can only run twice in Congress. That's it, twice. And then you got to pass the baton to someone behind you who's not your mother, your father, your wife, your husband, your son, your daughter. You pass the baton to the next person. We are rewriting the two-party system to where they say, hey, look, the Republicans are saying, wait your turn. We'll let you run for state Senate, but you're not running for on the federal level. Right? People are saying, why? Why not? They're questioning the whole idea of the establishment telling us the talking heads, who represents the people, right? And the last thing is, we're going to create rules that remove the immunity from government. Rules. In other words, if the government comes after you, Joe Public, John Public, whoever, Jana Public, let's make sure that we're not misogynist there. If they come after you.
Jane Public.
Jane Public. I called Jane. What did I say?
Jana.
That's not good? Okay. So we're saying this. They come after you. They violate your constitutional rights, right? And you have to spend $50,000 defending yourself. You get the best lawyers out there, right? The jury comes back and says, you know what? This is bogus. This is terrible. Yeah. This is a direct violation of your rights. The prosecutor and the government, they don't get to get their pound of flesh. Because when that case is over, you get every dollar that you put into your defense, you get 100% of it back. 100% of it. And on top of getting 100% of it back, you get compensated for the anguish that you had to go through by being persecuted by your government. That is leveling the playing field. That is taking everyone on both sides, left, right, center. You're in outer space, you wear a tin hat, you don't wear a tin hat. It doesn't matter who you are. If your rights are violated under the Constitution, right, you get all your money back, 100% of it. And the government has to pay. Do you want to know how quickly the stacked deck against the American people will change with that one law? With that one law.
Yeah.
And then implementing citizenry into government function. In other words, we have watch groups right now that have zero ability, no teeth. They have no teeth. They can talk about it. They can get out there. And you know what they say? They say, so they caught us. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it? Well, we're going to tell the people. So they tell the people, and people get out there and they get mad on Facebook and Instagram, like, this sucks. This is terrible. And then they do nothing because, they feel helpless.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to create mechanisms through this process that allow the American people to be heard.
But
protesting has always been heard.
First and foremost, we got to open up the state. We got to open up the cities.
But that's right. And 150,000 people will do that. 150,000 people.
And that's planned for Monday, is it?
Well, we don't know yet. Monday or Tuesday, there's going to be some protests on Sunday, and we'll kind of see how those actually go. And then we want to basically learn from those organizations. Mm-hmm. But our goal is to not leave without a resolution. 150,000 people that show up, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then we're going to monitor it carefully to make sure that they don't violate anyone else's constitutional rights, which they're already doing, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, once you've already gone down the slippery slope, we're going to start figuring out that the slippery slope is even slippier. Now they have more of a right to take away your ability to protest, right? It's not essential. Your Constitution is not essential. Can you imagine saying that to you?
Yeah, no,
it's not essential.
You say that to the founding fathers, and you'd end up tarred and feathered. You'd end up hanging from a lamppost. You'd end up with your governor's mansion burned to the ground. Well, we're up against the hard break here.
So what's your message to?
But before we go, I want to play a clip from yesterday because we're talking about getting back at China. We're talking about China's responsible. This is a clip I had for yesterday, but we didn't have time to play it. To me, this completely encapsulates this whole ordeal, and this man should be the spokesperson for the movement to hold China accountable. Let's play this cut.
So what's your message to, have you seen Donald Trump? Do you think he should step in?
Donald Trump, don't trust China. China is
So that man,
wow.
I believe that man, that Hong Kong protester, should be the man who leads the charge to make sure that China gets held accountable, because he has the fire in his belly. And if he hasn't already been disappeared, I think he should definitely lead that charge. Well, that's going to be it for this edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. We are going to cover that protest in Colorado when it happens. So stay tuned for that. But if you want to subscribe to the podcast, make sure that you subscribe either on the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. You can find us on the Podbean app, as well as conservative-daily.com. And we go live on Facebook every day. So make sure you go and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/conservative daily, all one word. So again, my name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Otto.
And remember that the fight to take back our country is not over, but the only way we can win is if we all fight together.